Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and this is Voice of the Global South. All right then, let's get started. On the show this week, Israel strikes Iran, sparks fear of an all-out war. What are Tehran's options? Will it go flat out to acquire a nuclear bomb? And the Dior bag is back in the news after triggering the downfall of South Korea's president. The luxury brand now ousts Mongolia's prime minister from power. All that and much more coming up on Voice of the Global South. Israel said it would attack Iran, and it did. On Friday, 200 Israeli fighter jets struck 100 targets across Iran, damaging nuclear sites and wiping out the military's top brass.
We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program.
The UN nuclear watchdog said that a uranium enrichment facility at Natanz was partially destroyed. The nuclear sites at Fordo and Isfahan were attacked in subsequent Israeli airstrikes. Iranian media acknowledged the killing of 6 of its generals and 6 nuclear scientists. They included Army Chief Major General Mohammad Hossein Bagheri, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Commander Major General Hossein Salami, Major General Ghulam Ali Rashid, who commanded the Khatam al-Anbiya or Emergency Command, and Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei vowed that Israel will be severely punished. A presenter on Iranian state-run TV read out Khamenei's statement.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, great nation of Iran, the Zionist regime opened its dirty and bloody hand to a crime in our beloved country this morning and revealed its evil nature by striking residential centers more than ever before. The regime must expect severe punishment. The powerful hand of the Islamic Republic's armed forces will not abandon it, God willing. Several commanders and scientists were martyred in the enemy attacks. Their successors and colleagues will immediately resume their duties, God willing. With this crime, the Zionist regime prepared a bitter and painful fate for itself and will definitely receive it.
Iran has since launched 100 drones followed by another 100 missiles, a few of which hit Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The US was quick to clarify that it had no role in the Israeli attacks on Iran, but the US military did help Israel intercept Iranian missiles. The Israeli military operation, codenamed Rising Lion, marked a dramatic escalation in its long simmering conflict with Iran. The tit-for-tat attacks by Israel and Iran significantly raised the risk of war in a region that's already burdened by instability. With both sides threatening further action, the fears of a wider regional conflict have only risen. Now, what makes Israel particularly anxious are the various intelligence assessments that say that Iran has accumulated enough weapons-grade uranium in a short span of time to build nuclear weapons.
In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival.
Iran maintains that its nuclear program is peaceful and that it has no plans to develop a nuclear weapon. But the UN nuclear watchdog reported that Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium has grown large enough to produce multiple bombs if further enriched. The UN nuclear watchdog has since approved a resolution declaring that Iran is not complying with its commitment to international nuclear safeguards. This raises the prospect of reporting Iran to the UN Security Council. Unless Iran clinches a deal with the US, it could face what is known as the snapback, reimposition of all UN sanctions that were lifted when the Iran nuclear deal was agreed upon in 2015. The US and its European allies, namely the UK, France and Germany, have time until 18th October because that's the date when the 2015 Iran nuclear deal is set to expire. Now, Netanyahu has said that the Israeli strikes on Iran will continue for as long as necessary. So, the question is, how will Iran respond? Iran has warned of more retaliatory measures, but it has not specified what those countermeasures could be. It could possibly include the following: an attack on Israel on a bigger scale and size than the April and October 2024 missile attacks, an attack on shipping in the region, disruption of oil and other supply lines, an attack on US bases in the region as well.
God willing, it won't come to that, and the talks will yield results. But if they don't, and conflict is imposed on us, the enemy's losses will undoubtedly be greater than ours. In that case, America will have to leave the region because all its bases are within our reach. We have access to them, and without hesitation, we will target all of them in the host countries.
Iran could also impose further restrictions on UN nuclear inspectors, increase the speed of its uranium enrichment program, or all of the above. It could also again possibly withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Now, the NPT does not permit the development of nuclear weapons. Iran became one of the original signatories of the NPT when it entered into force in 1970. There's a precedent of an NPT signatory quitting the agreement. North Korea, for instance, joined the NPT in 1985 as a non-nuclear weapon state, but withdrew from the treaty in 2003. In 2005, North Korea admitted to having nuclear weapons, and it conducted its first nuclear test a year later in 2006. So, Iran could follow suit if it chooses to go down that path. But there's a hitch. Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei has issued a fatwa against nuclear weapons more than 2 decades ago. A fatwa is a decree, ruling or interpretation on a point of Islamic law. So, will Khamenei rescind his fatwa? We'd asked this question on this show in November 2024. So the question is, what is holding Tehran back? Strangely, it's not Israel or the US. It's also not the fear of reprisals from the West or the harm that more economic sanctions will cause to the Iranian economy. It's actually its own supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Since then, the rhetoric in Tehran has only grown more strident. Now, Khamenei's advisor Ali Larijani told Iranian state TV in April that Iran will have no choice but to go nuclear if attacked. Iranian media now claims that Khamenei has only banned the use, not production of nuclear weapons. Apparently, the fatwa against the nuclear bomb does not necessarily ban its production, only its deployment and use. For his part, the chief of the UN nuclear watchdog, Rafael Grossi, cautioned that an Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear sites will push Tehran to build a nuclear weapon. I am telling you this because they have told me so directly, Grossi told the Jerusalem Post newspaper published from Israel. There's one other thing that Iran can possibly do, and that is to target Israel's nuclear sites. The thing to remember is this. Now, Israel has never publicly acknowledged its nuclear program, but by all accounts, Israel is one of 9 countries that are known to possess nuclear weapons. So, by attacking Israel's nuclear sites, Iran would be, in a sense, saying that if I can't have nuclear weapons, neither can you. Recently, Tehran claimed to have obtained Tel Aviv's nuclear secrets. Now, Iran has not revealed much except for saying that the trove of documents, videos, and photographs in its possession pertain to Israel's nuclear facilities and other sensitive information. Iran's intelligence minister and cleric Ismail Khatib, who was sanctioned by the US government in 2022 for his alleged involvement in cyber espionage, says the documents would be made public soon.
A comprehensive and complex operation was planned in this direction, which initially began with infiltration and attraction of resources, and this access to resources increased, making it possible that today, by God's grace, we are witnessing this important treasure. The complete nuclear documents have been obtained and transferred to Iran, and there are other documents related to connections with America, Europe, other countries, and intelligence documents that contribute to the country's strategic power.
Iranian state media identified 2 Israeli citizens, Roy Mizrahi and Almog Atias, as the operatives allegedly responsible for gathering and passing this information to Iranian agents.
The IRIB news agency announced, quoting informed sources, that the Iranian intelligence service has obtained a large amount of strategic and sensitive information and documents of the Zionist regime, including thousands of documents related to the regime's nuclear projects and facilities. The Shin Bet and the Israeli police announced in a statement 17 days ago that they had arrested Roy Mizrahi and Almog Atias, both 24, from the city of Nesher in the northern occupied territories, on the suspicion of collaborating with Iran. The arrest, if related to the recent case, came after the documents were taken out of the occupied territories. The arrest, if related to the recent case, came out of the documents were taken out of the occupied territories.
Tehran Times newspaper says that the documents reveal the locations of Israel's nuclear sites. Interestingly, the report made no bones about Tehran's intention to retaliate by hitting Israeli nuclear facilities. It quoted Iran's Supreme National Security Council as saying that these sites would be attacked in response to any Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear infrastructure. The chief of the UN nuclear watchdog said that the information Iran claims to have seized seemed to refer to Israel's Sorek Nuclear Research Center. Now, Sorek is located 20 kilometers south of Tel Aviv. It was established in 1958. The IAEA regularly inspects the Sorek research facility, but it does not have access to other strategic parts of Israel's nuclear program, such as the nuclear facility at Dimona, which is believed to provide the fuel for Israel's undeclared nuclear weapons program. If proven true, Iran's covert operation would be a possible retaliation to Israel infiltrating a secure archive in Tehran in 2018 and extracting documents detailing Iran's nuclear weapons program. Remember, Israel had spirited out what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described as half a ton of documents related to Iran's program. The Israeli announcement came just before Trump, in his first term, unilaterally withdrew the US from the Iran nuclear deal. Clearly, the last word has not been said on overt and covert operations that Iran and Israel have waged against each other for years now. In closing, I want to ask you a question. Do you know which country was the first to attack another country's nuclear facility? Take a guess. It was Iran. In 1980, Iran conducted an operation codenamed Scorched Sword to attack a nuclear reactor in Iraq. It was also the first instance of a preemptive attack on a reactor to prevent the development of a nuclear bomb. Ironically, Iran and Israel were on the same side of the divide. Iraq was their common enemy at the time. Iraq had claimed the French-built reactor was being built strictly for civilian purposes. While some experts before and after the strikes backed up this view, both the Israelis and Iranians believe that Iraq was clandestinely committed to developing nuclear weapons and starting to take steps in that direction. As it turned out, Israel launched Operation Opera a few months later in June 1981 to completely destroy the same nuclear reactor in Iraq. So history comes full circle, only this time it is Iran that is defending its nuclear program from Israel. By the way, just so you know, Israel planned to attack Pakistan's nuclear program in 1982. The history of the Indian subcontinent would have been vastly different had the Israeli plan carried through. Don't you think so? Tell us what you think. We'd love to hear from you. What's it with Dior bags and political scandals? First, it triggered the downfall of South Korea President Yoon Suk-yeol. Now it's led to the ouster of Mongolia's Prime Minister Oyun-erdene Lobsangam. The Korean scandal involved the then First Lady Kim Kyon-hee. She accepted a Dior bag as a gift, and it sparked a controversy that eventually cost Yoon his presidency. Here's what happened. In 2022, First Lady Kim Kyon-hee allegedly received a $2,200 handbag called Lady Dior pouch from a Korean-American pastor Cho Jae-young during a meeting at her personal office. This exchange was captured on a hidden camera concealed in the pastor's wristwatch. The footage was later released by Voice of Seoul, a YouTube channel, in November 2023. The video's emergence over a year after the incident escalated into a political firestorm. The Dior bag scandal raised ethical concerns under South Korea's anti-graft laws, which limit gifts to public officials and their spouses to $750. The controversy contributed to President Yoon's declining approval ratings. Polls showed public demand for apologies and explanations. Prosecutors cleared the First Lady of criminal charges in August 2024. But by then, the scandal had morphed into a demand for President Yoon's impeachment. Cut to 2025, a new Dior bag scandal leads to the ouster of Mongolia's Prime Minister. Oyun-erdene Lobsangam resigned on 3rd June after protests over his son's lavish lifestyle. Social media photographs of his son's extravagant lifestyle, including a black Dior shoulder bag, went viral, sparking protests and an anti-corruption investigation. It led to a confidence vote in Parliament on 3rd June, which he lost, resulting in his resignation. The scandal highlighted concerns about corruption in Mongolia. Protests lasting many weeks and involving mainly young people demanded accountability, ultimately forcing Oyunerthen out of office. The trigger was social media posts showcasing his 23-year-old son Temulin and his fiancée Yugumur's lavish lifestyle, including a black Dior shoulder bag. The photographs, which have since been deleted from her Instagram account, show the couple flaunting designer items, including the Dior bag, during an engagement holiday. Some other photographs show them enjoying luxury travel, such as helicopter rides and a high-end Mercedes-Benz. These images, which went viral, raised public outrage in a country where many struggle with poverty and economic inequality. The country's anti-corruption body had begun investigating the family's finances, questioning how they could afford such luxury given Oyunerthen's background as a civil servant earning a modest salary. Now, public reaction was swift and significant, with protests erupting for 2 weeks before the confidence vote, involving hundreds, many of whom were young. Protesters, including members of the group called Resigning is Easy, expressed frustration. The symbolism of the Dior bag was seen as tone deaf, igniting demands for transparency and accountability. Oyunerthen, who had been in office since January 2021 and was known for his reformist agenda, denied any wrongdoing. He called the scandal a smear campaign. But the confidence vote on 3rd June saw only 44 lawmakers voting in his favor out of 88 participants, far short of the 64 needed out of 126 total seats, leading to his resignation. The Dior bag scandal significantly eroded Oyunerthen's political standing, contributing to his ouster. It not only damaged his personal approval but also weakened the ruling Mongolian People's Party's position, with analysts noting the protests as a critical moment for democratic accountability. This scandal reflects broader societal debates in Mongolia about elite privilege and corruption. Oyunerthen, once hailed as a modernizer, faced criticism for his family's ostentatious displays, contrasting with his campaign narrative of humble rural origins. As an ex-user said, a social media post of a black shoulder Dior bag ultimately brought down the Prime Minister. The allegations against Oyunerthen's family hit a nerve. There was deep public frustration over endemic corruption at a time when the cost of living has skyrocketed. Some people are paying nearly half of their monthly income in taxes, while barely making enough to cover food, rent or utilities. Some others are not living paycheck to paycheck anymore. They're actually living loan to loan, debt to debt. Now, sandwiched between regional giants China and Russia, Mongolia was a communist state during the Cold War, but has transformed into a democracy since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Mongolia became a parliamentary democracy in the early 1990s, but has struggled with political instability and corruption ever since. In 2024, U.S. prosecutors sought to forfeit former Mongolian Prime Minister Sukhbatur Batbol's 2 New York apartments that he allegedly bought using stolen mining funds. Batbol, who served from 2012 to 2015, denied any wrongdoing. In 2022, mass protests erupted over a corruption scandal involving the alleged embezzlement of billions of dollars worth of coal destined for China. Thousands marched in freezing temperatures in Ulaanbaatar in a broad popular movement fueled by anger over corruption as well as a struggling economy. Public outrage was stoked by whistleblower claims that a so-called coal faction of lawmakers with ties to the industry had stolen billions of dollars worth of coal deposits. Mongolia has huge deposits of coal, copper, gold and phosphorite. About 90% of Mongolia's coal exports go to China. In 2021, Kurel Suk Okna was forced to resign as Prime Minister after protests and public outrage over the treatment of a COVID-19 patient and her newborn baby. A video of the woman in an ambulance clutching her baby prompted fierce criticism, particularly as Mongolian tradition dictates new mother should avoid the cold weather and cold food for the first month after birth. In 2018, Kurel Suk Okna survived a parliament vote to sack him over a corruption scandal that implicated high-level politicians in a state fund embezzlement scheme. In 2017, the then Prime Minister was sacked over allegations of corruption. The 2025 Mongolia protests were symptomatic of a widening disconnect between the ruling elite and everyday people. Youths took a stand against what they described as deeply embedded corruption and social injustice. They held a sit-in for 3 straight weeks before toppling the 10-month-old coalition government. Wonder who will be the Dior bag's next victim. And with that, it's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.